Hello, everyone, and welcome to another Stress Less, Accomplish More call. My name is Stephanie Matos. I'm a mindset coach on the Brightly Thrive team. And this call is all about mindset, the mindset around stress, the mindset around success, the mindset around happiness, and all the good things. So I'm really happy if you're watching the replay. Super excited to have some of you guys here with me live as well. And as we always do, we'll start with some topics that I've come up with that will be helpful if you are on here currently and you would like to join in. Please feel free to chime in at any time. You can either chime in through the chat or you can chime in by simply unmuting and talking. I always find that easier when I'm participating. It's a little bit easier to talk than type. However, it's completely fine if you would prefer to use the chat. And the other thing is if there's anything that I say that doesn't make sense, please feel free to interrupt me. So if I'm in the middle of something and you want to say, hey, wait, I just have a question, please, please, please interrupt me, interject. This is your time this is definitely your time for you in particular. So I want to make sure that you get served at the highest level. Okay, so what is interesting is that this call is all around stress and mindset. And the last couple calls, particularly last Thursday, so two calls from today, we talked a lot about how we can actually get into black and white thinking and get stuck in a certain way of thinking, feeling, and acting. And obviously this call is all about stress. And so that was really the topic that we talked about, was that sometimes we can accidentally get stuck in a fixed mindset. So we've been talking quite a bit about fixed mindset versus growth mindset. And in this fixed mindset, what can happen is that we can think, I will always be stressed, or this is just how I am, or I'm just an overwhelmed person, or I just don't handle XYZ the greatest, or whatever it is. But you can see how there's little wiggle room for you to be at a different type of way, because in your mind it's fixed and it's belief systems around how you might handle stress or this or that, or even speaking on stages or handling tech and all of this kind of stuff, right? I work with a lot of people, so I know you guys are quite techy. I work with a lot of people who in other companies that are quite tech challenged, where they feel very nervous around tech, or they're afraid they're going to break something or whatever it is, right? And so, but what happens is that when we have that belief system, we get stuck in that way of being. We get very stuck, and it leaves little room for changing the way that we could possibly be. And the example that I gave last Thursday, or whenever it was one of the calls prior to this one, uh, was if you have a child, because I know you guys work with students, right? If you have a kid that's taking a math test and they do really bad on one math test, that does not mean that they are bad at math. It might just mean that they need to study a little harder, or it might mean that they need to learn a different way or whatever. It does not mean that they're bad at math, but they might label themselves as bad at math and then never try harder in the math area because they just assume they're bad at it, right? Just to give you an example. So what happens is that then we don't try as hard to change because we think that it's fixed inside of us, like almost like it's concrete rather than flexible. And most things in the human existence are very flexible, and especially when it comes to the mind. So right before this call, so I'm in Florida. So right now it's around 7 p.m. So I worked during the day and then I had a little break. So I went to the gym and I like to go into the sauna. Okay. So I have a point to this. So the sauna that I go to it's quite big, but it's all, it's not huge. Many people can fit in there. However, generally speaking, when I go, because I go on off hours, there's not a lot of people in it. So for the last, I would say, year, maybe, I have sat in the exact same spot in that sauna, right? So it's right when you walk in, the very first seat. It's a little bench seating that's like a U shape. And I always sit there and I always sit there and I set up my phone in a very specific location and I put my water in a very specific location. And this is what I've done for the past year, like I said. And even probably before that, I was sitting in this location. Well, today I walked into the gym or I walked into the locker room where the sauna is, and through the glass door, I could see somebody was in my spot. Okay, my spot. it it's not my spot. I don't own it, but the spot that I always use, right? And so, no big deal, right? Because the thing is that it's just a U-shaped seating, right? It's going to be the same temperature. It's the same type of seat. They're all made out of the same material. There's really no difference between this seat and that seat, except for that this is where I usually sit, right? And Marissa just wrote, "Uh-oh, exactly. Well, this is what my brain did, right?" So I go in there and I sit on the opposite side, right? So I sit because there was somebody back here, there was somebody right here, and then there was me. And what was so interesting is that I realized it was causing me a lot of negative emotions inside of my body. Not extreme, but I felt very, very, very like something was off, right? Because I was not in my same seat. And because I do the work that I do, right, I found that very interesting. And I'm like, what is going on here, right? And it really is honestly because our bodies and brains and all the things territorial. So you know what? It actually wasn't territorial for me. I could see how some people would get like that. Or in other areas of my life, I probably do get territorial. In this one, it wasn't really territorial. It was more literally the habitual patterns of I sit here, I put my towel down, I sit here, I put this there, I do this, I sit like that, and then I sit there, and this is my little spot, and I've always sat there, right? So it was more the habit of it that caused me discomfort, not necessarily that there was other people in there or that somebody was sitting there. Because now, what might be territorial, I could see me getting upset if like there was like a really cushy, amazing seat, and that one's the crappy seat. Like, but it's not. They're all the same. And like I said, the temperature is the same, like everything's the same, right? And so as I was thinking about this, I was like, "Oh my goodness, this is exactly how we get stuck in patterns." Because when we are so how I was just saying, we can kind of get stuck into a pattern of thinking, feeling, and acting a specific way. So I am the one who takes care of everything. I'm the one who gets overwhelmed very easily. I'm the one who always feels stressed, right? So we put these like labels on ourselves, but what happens is that becomes a very strong habitual pattern in the body and in the mind. So that way of thinking feels and feeling and acting is like that. Now, in life, we're never because this is our body, this is our mind. If I go here, it comes with me. If I go there, it comes with me. There's never really a time when somebody could take my seat in my own mind, if that makes sense. Now, in the gym, it's a different thing because clearly somebody took that spot, right? And when she took that spot, right, unbeknownst to her, I like to sit there. She had no clue. I've never seen her before, right? And what that did was forced me out of my comfort zone into a discomfort zone. Okay. However, I would not have done that if she wouldn't have been sitting there. So what I'm saying is that I actually got forced into this. I got forced into sitting at a different location and then getting this epiphany aha moment, right? So this actually worked out well for me because I was like, "Oh my goodness. I feel discomfort," is how I would call it, right? Because it wasn't like I wasn't about to cry, I wasn't going to scream and yell and it wasn't like that. It was just a noticeable discomfort of I'm sitting in a different spot, right? And so it just dawned on me when I was sitting there, it's like, how much discomfort does it feel like when we decide I no longer want to live my life like this anymore? I no longer want to be the person that maybe I thought I was destined to be for the rest of my life if it's not serving me, right? So that sauna example is a very low level. Nobody's going to get hurt. I didn't suffer. It wasn't a bad thing. However, when we go over here into this world where it's like, you know what? I've been sitting on the bench of stress for so long that when I sit on the bench of calm, it feels very foreign, right? Or I've been sitting in the bench of anxiety for so long, this bench of calm feels foreign, right? And so this is something that I just wanted to bring up because that's how patterns work. And I think sometimes we get stuck in negative thinking or negative patterns because the opposite feels and so what I would say is the discomfort that I felt, it felt more of like, this isn't right. This isn't how it's supposed to be. Almost like a pair of shoes that don't belong to you or a pair of pants that don't belong to you or something like that. It was something that just didn't feel quite right. It felt foreign. But really, the truth was I was safe. I was going to get the same benefits. I was going to get the same effects. I was just facing in a different direction. Right. And so let me know if this speaks to you at all, Marissa. And if you have any questions, if what I said even made sense, you can let me know.
Yeah, actually, I do. I am an educator. I teach
Okay.
senior English through Primavera Online, and I am a woman of many hats. And I have four children, and I am a Girl Scout leader. I've been for probably, oh, it's going on about 9 years. And I teach religious education. That's a big one, along with being a full-time mother. And so I think I get really comfortable in the things that I do. And when somebody offers to help or take over my position, it's really hard for me because now somebody else has taken that place and they're not doing it right. They're not doing it the way I would want to do it. And so I think my problem is just being able to allow people to help me and let them help me, but and just kind of let go of the fact that, they're not going to do it exactly the way maybe I want to do it, but it's going to get done. And I think I dealt with that a lot coming back to work because I was a stay-at-home mom for probably 13 years. I was a teacher for 10. I stayed home for 13, raising my four children. And then I came back into the workforce just this January. And so allowing my husband to take over and, my kids are 8, 10, 12, and 14, and doing the things for them and packing the lunches and doing the laundry and helping me. Now he's on the other side. It was really hard for me because that was my spot. That was my place. And so I think that can sometimes be a little stressful for me and hard to just let go of and let, somebody else can come in, somebody else can help. It doesn't always have to be me. And I think in all the things that I do in life, I enjoy them because if I didn't enjoy them, I would not continue with the things that I do outside of my full-time work. But it's a juggle and it's a struggle for me, and I'm trying to deal with the stress of it because remember, I haven't worked full time like this. I was a substitute teacher for the last 2 years, but I could pick and choose, when I wanted to work. And so I think I can totally relate to exactly what you're saying. I think that for me, um, just allowing, somebody else to just step in and just kind of getting out of my comfort zone, getting out of the norm and saying, you know what, somebody else can do it. And it may not be the way you want to do it, but the job will get done. And so that's really something that is kind of something I'm dealing with when it comes to, you know, um, my schedule and my patterns that I'm so used to.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, thanks for sharing that. That fits into this perfectly. So if you think about it, so I think you said 13 years that you were, the ruler of your kingdom, of your children, all of that kind of stuff. And so that's a long period of time, over a decade, that you were the one doing all of these things. And so that is exactly what I'm talking about, where it's not that this is bad or going to hurt you, it's just different, and it feels so uncomfortable and dysregulating to the nervous system. Even sitting in a different spot in the same exact sauna, and the sauna is, like, not very big, dysregulated my nervous system a little bit because it's like, "That's not where I'm supposed to sit, I'm supposed to sit there." That's not how you're supposed to wash that dish. You're supposed to wash it like this, or that's not where the sandwich goes in the lunchbox. It's supposed to go on top of the da da da, or whatever. And so this is an interesting thing that we're talking about, right? And what's funny is that I actually used this exact topic as a example because I am somebody who, like, I have a tendency to be slightly type A. I like to do things a certain way. I'm very on top of things. I really like to do things in a specific order and, like, all of this kind of stuff. Probably why I felt a little off in when I was not sitting in the right spot. And let me tell you, as soon as she got up and left, I went and moved my stuff and sat in that spot, right? So, but what was happening was that it was causing conflict in my relationships because I would get so stressed watching my partner, the way that he would wash the dishes. He'd be like using too little soap, not enough soap. Are you sure that was clean? You barely scrubbed it. I didn't even see. You barely even. I know that. I know what that plate had on it. It was all, or, oh my gosh, I'm gonna have to undo this whole dishwasher because, like, this stuff is not gonna get washed if we leave it like that, right? And so I really had to learn how to let these things go, because this was the flip side of that, was that um I was also feeling overwhelmed because I was doing everything, and it wasn't his fault, right? It was because I wanted it done a certain way, and I knew that he wouldn't either listen or wouldn't understand or just didn't care like I cared or just whatever. And so what I had to do was ask myself was, is this worth it, right? And so that is also a practice. So essentially what I would have to do is sit in the discomfort of letting things happen the way that they were supposed to happen, or the way that they were happening. Right? Meaning it's okay if that one dish is a little bit dirty, guess what? I'll stick it back in the dishwasher again. Or if I pick up a spoon and it's got something on it, I can just stick it in the sink and it'll get washed again. It's not the end of the world. And that's what my body was taking it as. My body was setting off an alarm bell, like I wasn't safe, this wasn't safe, that wasn't okay, this wasn't okay. But some of that was because of my own identity, right? Where it's like I have taken care of myself and, all kinds of stuff for most of my life. And so letting somebody in to help with certain things felt very, very off. But I also was feeling exhausted for doing all of it, right? So I had to kind of understand, like, oh, I can shift my identities a bit, right? And you have some very strong identities created based on just the sheer volume of time that you put into these different positions that you've had over the course of your life. And now you're in this transition, and this transition hasn't been as long as the stay-at-home mom piece, right? So the stay-at-home mom piece was 13 years that I know you really enjoyed and you loved it. And now you're moving on to this iteration where your kids maybe just kind of need you a little bit less and you want to do this for yourself or for your family or whatever it is. But I think you said it was like 2 years maybe or something like that. And
Yeah, it was about 2 years that I was subbing, and I can pick and choose where I wanted to go. But one of the awesome things about this job is that I'm able to work from home 4 days a week, which is
yeah,
wonderful because I'm still able to work full time and help out in the mornings or when my kids get home from school. And so I have like, 8 hours, and I can granted, we don't have a lot of students that come live, and that's really discouraging for me as a high school English teacher because I've been out of the game so long that I want to teach. I want to teach. I have
yeah,
so much to offer. And when I don't have students show, it's really discouraging. So I've accepted that now, and I just keep trucking on. And if I have one student, then I make the very best lesson that I can with that one student, and I just kind of accepted that. And I think that's what I'm learning is just kind of the acceptance right now. What I'm going through, going back to work full time, is it's going to be okay. It's not going to be the way that you planned or the way that you want, but you can accept it. And all those little things, they're not important. They don't matter. So I'm figuring it
yeah.
out.
Yeah, and acceptance is a great word. I think that if we could, so let's use my silly sauna example, right? So I could have said, I'm just not going to go in. Like I would have never done that, but let's just pretend I'm just not going to go in if I can't sit in my spot. Then I'm like, I must accept this person's in the spot and accept the fact that it's going to be completely fine, right? And this is exactly what you're saying, right? Is that it's like this acceptance of what is instead of fighting what is. So the acceptance of the way that somebody maybe washes the dishes, and it's really funny that this is the exact example I brought up. I think in either the last call or the call before that, where these things. It's like, okay, I can accept that you might do things a little differently than me. I can accept that if you do the laundry, the clothes are going to be folded a little bit wonky, or the towels are going to be folded wonky, or whatever it is, and I can accept the fact that this is not the end of the world for me to for things to be this way, right? However, I think what it is letting your body feel the feelings that it feels, because like you said, you're like, I want to teach like 30 kids, or whatever. That would be so epic if I could teach a large amount of kids or whatever it is, right? And right now that's not happening, and that causes discomfort. But what you've done is you flip-flopped it into a positive where it's like, you know what? Even if there's just one person, I'm going to do one child, I'm going to do the best that I can to give them as much love and support and knowledge as I possibly can. And that's a great way of flipping that. right? And having the expectation that it's going to be okay even if things look a little bit different than what you wanted them to be. And sometimes the way that we want things to be, actually we don't know that actually something better is around the corner, right? Or something better, it could be even better than what we expected a lot of times, you know. One thing that I was going to say is that with the way the brain works, there's a lot of neurology that gets built, right? And so with neurology, it starts to bundle up, and the more pathways that go to one thing, the more it gets lit up in our brain. So, for example, if I am just learning Spanish, right? Let's use Spanish as like a new language as an example. I'll have a little bit of neurology. Once I'm fully fluent and I can dream in Spanish and speak in Spanish, then that ball of neurology is much more lit up and bigger, thicker, stronger. And so some of the transitions that you're feeling of like letting your husband do some things, or maybe even letting your kids do some things, or letting go of certain things that you're like, you know what, it's okay if somebody does this. It might take them 10 times longer than it would do. I would do it. And maybe they do it backwards the way that I would do it, which is what my partner does a lot. He does things backwards. I'm like, that's not step one. And he's like, but this is my step one. And I'm like, okay. But what happens is that that neurology is still there. So even if you're not that version of you anymore, it's not like it just gets deleted. And so right now what you're doing is building a new neurology around this new way of teaching, this new way of being, this new identity that you have as teacher, you know, all of this, a full-time teacher, right? Because this, you were substitute. So first you were stay at home, well, teacher, stay at home mom, identity, long ones too. So that was 10 years, and that's 23 years, you know what I mean, total. And then it's like 2 years of dipping your toes in the water, being able to say yes when you want to and when it feels good. And now it's full time. And so this version of you is fairly new, right? So if you think about like the 23 years prior, that's 2+ decades. This is 2 years, right? So some of this
Yes.
is just you kind of becoming a little bit more comfortable with this new norm that you have, right?
Yes. Like
Because
I,
that
I've
neurology is still there. Go ahead.
yes. So I've never been a full-time mom and a full-time employee. I've never,
Mhm.
so this is where I'm at, and I'm doing my best, and like I said, working from home is awesome because it kind of helps me with that transition. I can't imagine if I would have to come into the office. I mean, I would do it, obviously, but um, I'm just so grateful that I am able to stay home and help my children because they are young. Um,
Yeah.
but yeah, I just think that it's a new world. I have friends that have been full-time moms and full-time employees forever. And I used to look at them and say, I don't know how you do it. And I just do it. And so that's where I'm at today. And it's a balance. I'm really figuring out like how to balance everything and be able to hold it together. And it's not too bad, but I still feel like there's some areas that I want to work on, continue to work on, and get better at. So, but I'm very grateful that my husband, he was an engineer for, oh my goodness, 25 years, and we're taking a turn here where he's allowing me to fulfill and go back and to education and work on my career again, while he holds down the fort. So I'm pretty lucky that I'm able to do that, and have a supportive husband and family.
Oh my gosh, yeah, that's incredible. It's and this is so, you know, I just use that new language as an example. That really is a great descriptor for this, or a great analogy for this, because the thing is that your body is speaking a language to you that's through the brain, through the hormones, peptides, emotions, feelings. You know, if you want to look at it, it's like emotions and feelings and even the thoughts that we think are sort of like the language of our human existence, right? And so right now you're kind of learning this new language of understanding like he's going to be okay, they're going to be okay. I love this. I get to be home. This is incredible. Sometimes there might not be people. I felt a little bad about that at first, but now I'm happy when even there's one. That's great. You know what I mean? It's like you're kind of learning this new orchestra or dance or language, however you want to look at it, that's just very new to your system. And I think you're doing an incredible job, to be honest. I think you're doing an amazing job. And just you getting to that word acceptance, um it is, I think, one of the most challenging people things for people to do. So the fact that I didn't say it, you said it. You were like, I've come to this place of acceptance, and I'm like, wow, that's actually a very evolved way of thinking that a lot of times when people are in full stress mode or overwhelm mode, it's very, very challenging to even comprehend the idea of accepting that this is challenging, or accepting this might look different than I thought, or accepting that this is how things are, or accepting that I'm feeling challenged about giving up certain things that I used to do all the time or whatever it is. And so I think that that's a huge, huge, huge thing. One day a week in the office is just enough for me. Yeah, and that's epic too. That I obviously I work from home. This is a rental that I have here in Tampa. I bounce around quite a bit because my job allows me to move since I have this, and it is so helpful, especially when you have kids and you have things that you want to do at home and all of that kind of stuff, because you can have quick accessibility. It's not like you have to have a commute and all of that. So I'm really happy that you are enjoying that. Very, very happy that you're enjoying that. And I didn't know that you were an educator because, different people come on here all the time. I have had a couple people who are educators come on, and for your students, this is a huge thing that you're understanding about yourself because, as we said before, really a lot of this is a fixed mindset or a growth mindset. And you're very much in a growth mindset where you're like, you know what, this might look differently than I thought, but that doesn't mean it's going to be bad. That actually means it can be okay. And I can accept this. And you know what? I'm noticing that I'm feeling challenged about this, but I know that I don't really like feeling challenged about that. And then I know I can change that. So you're being very flexible in your mindset, and what's cool about that is that has a trickle down effect to kids. Not only your own kids, but the students that you work with. There's a trickle down effect of we oftentimes they're not listening to what we say, but they see what we do. They see how we act, all of that kind of stuff. So I just want to give you a lot of credit for that too, because a lot of that growth fixed mindset work is all around students. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really what it's about, but it really helps adults as well.
Yeah, I think
Yeah.
too, as an English teacher, there are times that we incorporate social emotional learning lessons, within our syllabus. And I love when I teach those because I have to develop the lesson and I get to share certain points that I feel are important. And I'm learning myself as I'm teaching these SEL lesson, with my students. And I love that because I say it out loud. I go through the slide deck and a couple students and myself will share some strategies, tips, things that have worked for us. And I think that's great. So those are like my favorite lessons over anything, is teaching those social emotional lessons with my students because I'm learning too. Yeah.
I never had any English teachers like that or any English classes like that. I probably would have really enjoyed that. I'm 46, so I don't know what the curriculums were when I was that age,
Yeah,
but it wasn't
we're the
quite
same
like that.
age.
Yeah.
We're the
Oh,
same
really?
age.
Okay, there you go. Okay, so then you probably learned a similar style to what I learned, and I don't remember any kind of emotional anything. I probably would have actually that would have served me very well as
Yes, I
a
I
teenager and a
noticed
kid.
I noticed they're doing that too, I think a lot because of COVID. And I think that a lot of the kids, because we are an online school, and the students are full time with us, that they don't really
Yeah.
get to interact so much in the brick and mortar and with other students, other peers. So we just really hit on some things that are just so, so important that they're gonna miss out on if they're not in person, so we try to fulfill that. So when I started this job, I had no idea that we were going to, cover so much with SEL, but I love it. And so I really do. I have a lot of fun with that when I get to teach that.
That's incredible. So I just realized we're over time, and I want to be respectful of your time as well because I'm like, oh man, I hope she didn't have a meeting at because I think you said it was 4 o'clock your time, so it's 4:30 now. I think you said. So, Marissa, it was so nice to get to know you. It was so nice to hang out with you. It was so nice to chat with you, and talk about these really important topics. And I just want to say I'm really honored to be able to be in a position where I can support people like you who are supporting the next generation for our country, for the future. And I know that your job is super, super important. And so I just want to say that I'm really honored to be able to support you guys and be on this mission and path with you. And I hope to see you again. So I know that you've been watching the replays. I really appreciate that. Thanks for watching the replays. However, if you can join me live again, if it ever fits in your schedule again, I would absolutely love to have you again. All right. Thank you, Marissa. Oh, you're so welcome. It was my absolute pleasure. All right, you guys. So until we meet again, I want to wish you so much love, so many blessings, so much health, healing, and success to each and every one of you. I host calls every Monday and Thursday, and then every third Wednesday evening, which is this call right now. So hopefully you can catch me on one of those times. All right. I'll talk to you soon. Bye, everybody. Bye.